You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on iTunes and at facebook.com/DCAU Review. Now, here's today's episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 4 of the DCAU Review. I am Cal, and as always, with me today, my brother, good friend, and co-host, Liam. Liam, welcome to episode 4 of the DCAU Review.
I'm excited to be back. We got a good one today.
Yes, indeed we do. No point in messing around. Might as well jump right into it. Episode 4 of Batman the Animated Series, chronologically, is The Last Laugh. So, Liam, already we're 4 episodes in, already our second Joker episode, which is an interesting dynamic. Nothing to that, other than I guess he's Batman's most popular villain. But we got an interesting episode today to discuss. I'm pumped about it. Liam, if you don't mind reminding any listeners at home how we grade our episodes and the different scoring metrics that we use in order to break down an episode.
Absolutely. So we break it down into 4 main categories, each from a scale of 1 to 10. The main 4 are plot, voice acting, animation, and music. And there's also sort of a 5th phantom bonus category if anything that we really liked isn't covered in those 4 categories. We are able to give an extra point or two to the episode in the bonus category. But yeah, those are the 4 main ones.
Cool. Yeah, I'm. As we mentioned, this is another Joker episode. So 2 episodes ago, we covered Christmas with the Joker. And if you guys haven't had a chance to listen to that one, you can check us out. We're on iTunes. Just search the iTunes store for the DCAU Review. We'd love for you to subscribe to us, give us a review. A 5-star one is certainly always welcome and appreciated, but we definitely would love for you to subscribe to us on iTunes. Also, don't forget to check out the Twitter at DCAU Review. Liam, I know you've been doing some good stuff with that. I've seen you interact with a couple other different DC animated podcasts and Batman Beyond podcasts. So
absolutely.
And hello to our supporter Craig, who just absolutely has been nothing but our biggest cheerleader so far. So we appreciate your support, Craig. We don't even pay you anything, and you're out there supporting us. Follow him at Night, Nite Batman. Night Batman. He's a good Twitter follow for you, too. Like I said, we have episode 4 today, another Joker episode, and this one is a little bit different, I think, than Christmas with the Joker.
Yeah, it's a basic plot. Basically, the Joker decides he wants to rob the city blind, and how else do you do that? But if you're a Joker, you're going to use laughing gas, and you decide to incapacitate the whole city. Well, Callum, how in the world are you going to dose the entire city in laughing gas?
I mean, to me, only one way comes to mind, and that is creating... First of all, you have to get yourself a submarine. And that said submarine must have a smile. Like, the submarine must be smiling in and of itself. Then what you do is, on top of that submarine, you somehow attach this floating trash garbage scow that you then hose down with laughing gas and drive around the city so that said gas permeates through each and every neighborhood, rendering your victims completely and totally helpless as they double over with laughter and you empty out their pockets and just
it's a foolproof plan.
It's a tale as old as time. I mean, how many times have you heard, like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna take over the city, I'm gonna rob all of the stores, but every time you hear that, it's a goofy plan. I mean, this plan was clearly well thought out.
Of course.
We were joking as we were watching this episode, and this is the first episode we've kind of got to watch together in person, which was a cool experience. But that we were joking at the amount of money that Joker has spent on various items in this episode, whether it's your smiling submarine, whether it's your garbage scow, or some of the other things.
There's like a hydraulic lift that allows them to come up from the submarine out of the garbage scow. It's like there's like a hidden entrance that goes down, that lets you go through the garbage scow to get down to the submarine.
There's a hole for the periscope to go up through
absolutely.
the garbage. There's an automatic ramp that also, as soon as that hydraulic lift comes out, goes off of the garbage
We'll
scow.
also get to it, but they also have a sentient robot just working the crew. Just working for the crew. So Joker spent a lot of money. So anyone that's listened to Batman or has watched Batman the Animated Series know there's a pretty famous episode later on where Joker runs into some money troubles, and it's like, yeah, he should have spent maybe a few $100,000 less on that hydraulic lift and maybe hired himself an accountant. I don't know.
Probably would have been a worthwhile investment if I had to say so. But yeah, with that said, it's a fun episode. Looking at this, I think you and I have probably quoted this episode. The "You killed Captain Clown" line is legendary in our household, at
Absolutely.
least.
You killed Captain Clown. You killed Captain Clown.
So, it's a fun episode, but why don't we jump right in? We'll start with the plot. We kind of already covered a little bit of the plot, what the plot itself is. Was there anything that stood out that you liked, that you didn't like, and what was your overall score for it?
Yeah, it's like I said, I mean, the basics, when you take out the methods with which the Joker executes his plan, he's just a bad guy who's looking to rob the city. Hold the city for, I guess not hold the city for ransom, but incapacitate all the cops, anyone that could stop him, and just he wants money and jewels and electronics and all that. And obviously he has a large budget, so he needs to supplement. He needs some supplementary income. There's a lot of there is one cute little bit at the beginning where they show Bruce Wayne shaving and showering.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird, but then they flash to the first time we see Joker. He's in his submarine, and he is also at a mirror applying some sort of makeup and cologne, and so they're sort of showing Joker's morning routine to go along with Batman's. It's just a quirky little bit that I don't really think I've ever seen that anywhere else in a comic book or another cartoon or a movie or anything. So that stood out to me as pretty unique.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny too. I never thought of that. In fact, when that first scene comes on where Bruce is shaving in the bathroom, I'm like, why is there a shower scene with Bruce Wayne here? But it's a cool little, odd couple-ish type compare and contrast between who Bruce is and who Batman is and who the Joker is. My one complaint about the plot, and we talked about this in Christmas with the Joker, but it appears that the Joker, all this time we've been thinking that the Joker's greatest foe is Batman, right?
Correct.
But in fact, we learned in Christmas with the Joker and then again in this episode that truly it's gravity and maybe his equilibrium a little bit that is his greatest foe. Because Batman doesn't have to throw a punch to defeat him again. He runs away from Batman, trips again, and gets tangled up in a rope at the very end of the episode. Batman doesn't have to throw a punch at him. He doesn't have to throw a batarang to hit him in the face or knock him out. He doesn't have to tie him up. He does it himself. He's a buffoon.
A little bit, yeah. That's a very, and I think you mentioned this, it's a very Super Friends way of wrapping up the villain. It's again, and the deal was, maybe if that's a little inside, it's like when Super Friends was on the air, they weren't allowed to show superheroes punching supervillains.
Right.
Any sort of
cartoon violence was not allowed.
Anything that a child could potentially replicate on their little brother or on their friends at school was seen as, you can't possibly show somebody punching somebody else. Even though it's, a man in a bat suit punching a clown, but it's
a drawing
a drawing of that happening. But it's, that's just how the world worked at the time.
Right.
So whereas in Batman, and obviously as we go on, you'll see plenty of him actually getting into, hand-to-hand combat with plenty of people. But yes, these early episodes, and maybe that's still they're still in the feeling out process by what they could get away with. as far as there's been books and interviews done with Bruce Timm and other people. Eric Radomski have talked about having this line cut or this punch cut because it was too violent, or so I'm sure that stuff came up, and so maybe they just figured if we can find a way to resolve the episode without Batman just having to punch a guy in the face, let's do it that way.
Right.
So, I mean, and it is a lighthearted enough episode that it's not the end of the world. But the fact that, as you mentioned, and especially since we've been watching these in the order they were produced, we just saw a Joker episode recently where he slips on a roller skate.
He skipped on a roller skate
and falls, and Batman catches him, and then now here we are. 2 episodes later, and we're seeing a very similar scenario. It is just funniest. Joker's greatest enemy is in fact gravity, and apparently just not looking where he's going.
Yeah, clearly. What a buffoon. On the other side, on the flip side of that, a ton of violence shown against Captain Clown. We won't go into depth on that, but there's a lot of fun violence shown beating up this helpless robot.
They definitely took advantage of anything where you can smash a guy in the head where he won't have to bleed, or you don't have to show any cuts or abrasions. You can just smash up any robots.
I just love the way of thinking that a child wouldn't then attempt to take a long like Batman takes this long metal pole and just bashes Captain Clown in the head over and over and over again. So much that he knocks his face off. But no, a child wouldn't replicate that because it's a robot. They understand that. So I gave the plot a 5 out of 10. What did you give it?
Same actually for me. Yeah, it's and 5 out of 10. I mean, it's if this were school and you were grading, I know a 5 out of 10 sounds like an F. Mm-hmm. That's not really, I don't think, what either of us are saying. It's just it means more. It's just middle of the road. Yep. Like I said, it's if you take out the sort of wacky methods, it's just criminal tries to rob the city. Batman comes and stops him. Yeah. It's basic. It's fine. But it's sort of the music between the notes, so to speak, that kind of adds the hilarity and some of the silliness to it.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's an excellent segue, because now we get to come and talk about my favorite part of the episode, which has to be the music. And as you can hear, some of the music coming in now. This, to me, is probably, other than the Joker's main theme, maybe Batman's main theme, this is the episode that sticks out to me for having the best music. The music in this episode makes this episode for me. If you didn't have the very opening scene and the heavy bass coming in, and you have the strings or whatever that is, the horns, I don't even know what it is, but coming in with that theme, the theme that kind of goes throughout the episode while they're pulling the heist and knocking over jewelry stores, and then later as they're trying to gas down the garbage thing again, and like it's the theme of the episode, and I don't know why they chose that. Like it doesn't necessarily ring true to anything other than they just decided to use this music piece for this episode, and to me, it is the best. This is the epitome of music in this. This is like the pinnacle of music in Batman here. Like it's going to be hard for me to top this. I gave music in this episode 10 out of 10. That's
wow.
My first perfect score. I don't think you have a perfect score yet either. But
I believe I gave the music in our last episode. 10
there you go, 10 out of 10. So it's funny that music has been the only thing thus far that has gotten a perfect score out of these 4 episodes that we've done reviews over. But what did you think?
I think we mentioned this on our first show. To me, music, as well as obviously the animation, is what set this apart from every other 90s superhero cartoon, from the Iron Mans and Spider-Mans, and even or the older Hanna-Barbera cartoons,
where that stuff was more an afterthought,
right? And not that there aren't cool moments or cool themes or even or cool episodes of those shows, but I mean, consistently the music. Obviously, we see now in back-to-back episodes where the music has just really carried the tone. Yep. And there's a great scene towards the end when Batman chases the Joker into the plant where they burn all of the garbage, and it's like they're on a conveyor belt, and they flash to Batman, and sort of the Danny Elfman Batman theme is playing, and then it flashes to Joker, and the Joker theme is playing, and he's sitting there like with his head in his hands, smiling, looking all cute. as Batman, and his theme's playing, and then it flashes back to Batman, and the Danny Elfman theme picks back up, and they just go back and forth. And in the middle, you hear that sort of the main theme that we hear throughout the show. There's really great drums, and as you mentioned, the bass really comes in the middle.
Yep.
And it's great. So I gave music on this one a 9 out of 10.
We're pretty close on that.
Yeah. I dug it a lot. Like I said, I prefer the music a little bit more in our last episode, Nothing to Fear. But yeah, absolutely, it's a great thing, and I think we're going to be talking about the music a lot, especially in these early episodes.
And to me, that's cool. That's like we said, what carries this makes this relevant today. While some of the some of the plot points or some of the things, you look at the Bat computer. I think it's in this episode. There was he uses something printed out of the computer, and it's on the old timey green and white paper with the little dots on the side that you have to pull off, the perforated paper.
Yes.
It's like, oh well, Batman's technology doesn't hold up, but the music and the plots and the overarching themes in a lot of these episodes holds up. So. Yeah, that was, to me, that made this episode what it is. So far we had, I had plot 5 out of 10. You had plot
5 out of 10.
5 out of 10 also. I had music 10 out of 10. You had music 9 out of 10. Mm-hmm. So why don't we move on to animation? Any thoughts on animation from this episode?
Yeah, it's a little bit inconsistent. There's some really nice scenes. I'm going to mention it every episode. There's some really nice stuff with Batman's cape. Because that's such a...
Hashtag cape movement.
Yes, hashtag cape movement. Absolutely. Well, and it's, again, that's something where if you read a lot of comics, there's certain artists, Todd McFarlane, who, like, the cape is giant and it's sweeping around him, and, when the wind blows, and you see all these cool shots, and there's some cool stuff with that. A lot of the when he fights Joker's thugs, and especially Captain Clown, I think that's animated pretty well. Mm-hmm. It's not stellar. It didn't stick out to me the way something like Nothing to Fear did.
Sure.
Or you had some really
Was
spectacular
there better cape
stuff.
Movement in this episode, though, or in Nothing to Fear?
Probably Nothing to Fear.
Nothing to Fear.
That had the blimp scene, so there's more chances. There's more wind. He's a little higher up in the air. So
we might have to create a subcategory of cape movement
that might be the score. 6th category. There's our 4 main, our bonus category, and our 6th category.
Cape
the old CM. The cape movement. But... no, so yeah, I had animation at 6 out of 10 here.
6 out of 10.
Not super stellar. It's not. I wouldn't put it up there with like the top episodes of the series.
Sure.
But there wasn't a lot that stuck out to me. I thought Joker was a lot more consistently animated in this one than in Christmas with the Joker.
I would definitely agree.
So the designs were all there.
Definitely. Yeah, I thought there were a couple cool nifty things. I promised you I wasn't going to talk 10 minutes about the opening Bruce Wayne shower scene just for awkward sake. But there were, water is not an easy thing to animate.
True.
And I thought that was done pretty well. It's an interesting scene that you start off with, like we talked about the dynamic between him and Joker. There's also another water scene later on where the Batboat makes its animated debut.
Yes.
And we were talking about this while we were watching the episode. The Batboat itself is kind of an odd design choice. It's kind of shaped like a swordfish. Or like some sort of torpedo type thing. It's not really a boat as much as it is like a submarine that also rides on the surface. Like I don't know how to describe it. But there's a cool scene where the Batboat first makes its debut, and you see it flying through the Gotham Harbor or wherever they are. That I thought was animated really, really well. I thought there were some inconsistencies. My big thing with animation that takes me out of it sometimes is just proportion things. We talked about that in the Christmas with the Joker episode. In this, there were a few proportion issues. In one scene, Captain Clown, looks huge, like he's towering over Batman. In the next scene, they're kind of equal height. That's kind of nitpicking. I thought the Joker's look was a lot more consistent in this episode. There is kind of that one scene we talked about while we were watching it where you can kind of see those big black circles develop around his eyes, but it was only in one scene. He kind of had a fairly consistent look throughout. I thought his lackeys were a little goofy looking without their masks on. And they actually kind of resemble... I don't know who they... I think they're supposed to resemble real-life people, but I cannot for the life of me put up my finger on who they're supposed to resemble. So if any listener out there knows who they look like, or if it's one of the producers or something, go ahead and tweet it at us at DCAU Review, or leave us a comment. But those guys kind of looked like they might have been caricatures of a real-life person. But overall, I think that the animation was fine. I think it was there was some tough stuff. One of my favorite animated scenes was that same scene that you talked about, where they're on the conveyor belt headed towards the trash burning. The flashback between Batman and Joker sitting there, when he's sitting there looking at Batman, and you kind of see the shadows from the grates go over his face. I thought that was fantastic. Talk about things that aren't necessarily easy. They didn't have to do that. Like they did not have to animate it that way. They could have taken a very easy way out to animate it. But so with that, all that taken into consideration, I gave it a 7 out of 10 for animation. So you gave it a 6 out of 10?
Yes, I did.
And I gave it a 7 out of 10. Okay. All right. So we're coming into our last category here, and that would be voice acting. I know you are as excited as anybody for the arrival of real Alfred.
Absolutely. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. makes his debut here, and thank God, not a moment too soon. Although we did give props to Earl Bowen on his performance in Nothing to Fear. He did have a nice moment there. But this is Alfred. This is hashtag my Alfred.
This is hashtag my Alfred, right.
This is the voice that I hear in my head when I think of Alfred for the most part. And so that was refreshing. He gets to be sort of a comedic player in this episode, and it's not sort of the droll like the Jeremy Irons Alfred in the Batman vs Superman movie or in Justice League, where he's just sort of snarky. He gets to be, he pranks Batman at the start of the episode
because it's April Fool's Day.
Right, it's April Fool's Day. As we didn't mention that. Yeah. And then he has a scene where he's exposed to the laughing gas, and he just goes crazy and starts breaking things. And
Alfred. Just a little spring cleaning, sir.
It's a little bit of character work where we've started to see Bruce and Alfred's relationship in a way they didn't really explore in the first couple episodes.
Certainly.
Where you see more of they're sort of willing to rib each other a little bit and kind of poke each other, and that you can see that it's a familial relationship, that Certainly. It's not... Alfred doesn't just work for the guy,
right?
They're family. He cares, right? Exactly. He cares about him. They'll poke fun at each other. They'll sort of laugh at each other's expense to an extent, and that's exciting. Mark Hamill, it felt like he found his footing a little bit more
Certainly.
than again, Christmas with the Joker. This is only his second time, and as we mentioned, he was re-recording lines for these first few episodes. They had a different voice for the Joker originally,
right?
So I'm sure it was also probably a time constraint thing to get his voice done so they could get these episodes to air.
Right.
But so I thought he was a more consistent, and I mentioned this and we talked about it while we were watching the episode. There are no two Joker laughs in this episode that sound exactly the same to me.
Which is cool.
And again, that's something I've heard Mark Hamill say, and it's something, if you read comic books, Joker's laugh is never written the same way. It's never. Mm-hmm. It's not just ha ha ha. There's ho hos and he he's, and it's different depending on the mood. It can be a little more sinister, a little more evil sounding. It can be full of joy if he's laughing because he just dumped garbage on Batman's head and he smells bad now. It's a different type of laugh for a different occasion. So it wasn't just he didn't just have like a stock Joker laugh. That's something like. Maybe something like the Cesar Romero from the Adam West show or something like that sort of had, kind of one laugh. Not that that's a bad laugh or anything, but he kind of just had the one.
Right.
And here you see a guy who's just constantly evolving and changing the way he plays the role and sort of depending on on the situation, and you can tell that that's part of who Mark Hamill is and how he takes his craft as an actor seriously.
Certainly.
Which again, for a children's cartoon in the 90s was somewhat rare in the voice acting. So yeah, Mark Hamill really comes into his own here. So I gave voice acting 7 out of 10.
Awesome.
On this episode for that. And for hashtag my Alfred.
And for hashtag your Alfred.
But what about you?
I gave voice acting 6 out of 10. I think Alfred, just as we talked about Joker, Mark Hamill trying to find his footing a little bit. I am thrilled to have real Alfred, hashtag our Alfred, hashtag my Alfred, officially on board here. But I felt like some of his lines at the end of the episode were delivered a little, weakly, and that's nitpicking. Batman, fine in this episode. There's one scene where he's talking to himself that you're just like, well, why is he talking to himself other than to narrate for the fourth, people there for the fourth wall?
Yes.
And agree with you. Joker is fantastic in this episode. He had a lot of great one-liners, more smiles per gallon. Talk about a sidewalk sale as they're taking money out of people's pockets as they walk through the city. The only thing going up are the laughing stocks, which was a great part, because then I'd never noticed they cut to the henchmen who are standing right in front of him after he tells this joke, and they both roll their eyes at him. Like,
yes, they have their backs turned to him, so he's laughing up a storm. He's LMAOing, and the two thugs are just.
That was great.
It was awesome.
So overall, nothing terrible. Mark Hamill carries the episode. He's tremendous in this episode. The "You killed Captain" clown line, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, is fantastic. When Batman tells a joke at the end of the episode, and he goes, "That's a joke, right?" Mm-hmm. And he's like, he starts laughing because Batman finally told a joke, but at the same time, he's slipping this razor sharp card out of his sleeve to hurl at Batman. That I thought was great.
Clean up your act, Joker. Oh, that's a joke, right? Batman finally told a joke.
I ended up giving it a 6 out of 10. So my overall score for this episode, totaling it up, came out... Oh, but I did give... I almost forgot. I have a bonus point here for Alfred real Alfred joining the team. So Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. gives this extra point. So that took my score of 28 out of 40 up to 29 out of 40 total for this episode.
Yeah, and my total is 27 out of 40. So, a pretty strong episode. And again, we sort of talked about this. Not the grades aren't always going to tell the whole story. I mean, I adore this episode.
Yep.
When you hold it up to that critical lens and you're a little more honest, I think you can say, oh, maybe it's this wasn't quite as good, or this isn't as well made as something else. But like comparing this to something like On Leather Wings, not that was a bad episode, but I'd probably, like, if I'm going back in my leisure time to just watch Batman the Animated Series, I'll watch The Last Laugh probably 10 times before I would go back and watch On Leather Wings.
Agreed.
Or something like that again. So.
Yeah, you have to. You look at it as a whole. I mean, we talk about it. That's why we give our individual grades. We break it down. This plot, 5 out of 10. We gave that better than the plot of Return. Of A Christmas with the Joker. We gave that better than. May have given that similar or better than the plot for On Leather Wings. But then last week's episode, the plot was much, much stronger, but there may have been some things in that episode that we didn't like, whether it's voice acting or animation. So it kind of... It's nice to be able to kind of put these all together and give it an overall score, but like you said, there are some things that will carry the episode. For me, this episode would have ranked a lot lower if it wasn't for that music.
Oh, absolutely.
The music makes this episode, like I said, and if not, I think we would have ended up with a whole different story.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that, we appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. As we said, please do us a favor. Give us a follow on Twitter at DCAU Review. Go ahead and subscribe to us on iTunes. Just search for DCAU Review on the iTunes store. Please leave us a 5-star review. It helps us out immensely. And also, don't forget to like us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/DCAU Review, or you can just use the search bar, search for DCAU Review. With that said, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will see you guys on next week's episode.
Bye-bye.